If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we're back. My name is Chris Evan. I'm the CEO of Survival Dispatch. We have got our in-house Intel subject matter expert S2 with us tonight, and our friend Jeff Capps calling in from the great state of Texas. How was your Christmas, Jeff?
It was excellent. We were in Amarillo, and some of my family members are Democrats, and I could tell by the expressions on their face. They weren't terribly happy to see me because I had a great big old smile on my face when I walked in. So, but minor incidents of anything, and we had a fun time, and it was really pretty much happy.
Right on, right on. S2, how was your Christmas?
Christmas was pretty good, pretty quiet. We went further down south and spent time down there.
Right on. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So tonight's topic is titled The Top 50 Fake News Stories of 2024. We won't be able to get through all 50 of them, but if you go to patreon.com/survival dispatch, you can download the sit rep or the brief for tonight's episode, and it has all 50 of them in there. We'll go for approximately an hour as far as we can into chapter 1 on the top fake news stories. Then we'll pivot to chapter 2 and cover maybe a dozen or so current top stories. And then chapter 3, as per usual, will be funny memes and zany stuff. All right. So to get started on this, I want to just establish the definition of misinformation and disinformation. So for those who don't know, misinformation is false or inaccurate information, basically somebody getting the facts wrong, whereas disinformation is purposeful. It's false information, which is deliberately intended to mislead, intentionally misstating the facts. So I've got 4 pages pulled up from statista.com, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure that I agree with all of the stats that they have. But for the first one, it's titled Social Media, Where It's Hardest to Tell the Truth. So I'm going to blow this up a little bit. And here's what their numbers are. So they're saying that TikTok is the hardest one to tell if something is real or not. And then X, and that you can see as it goes on down the list. I personally, I think this is a inherent skill set or an acquired skill set of being able to look at something and have your bullshit meter go off. And I don't know that it's predicated on the platform as much as it's predicated on the person. S2, we've spoke about this previously as far as having the ability to spot true and false stuff. I'm curious what your opinion is. Do you think there's a difference platform to platform? And if you do think there's a difference, is it because the audiences are different, or do you think it's an acquired skill or potentially inherent skill?
I don't think there's any difference. There's so much of this going on right now, and it's going to get worse than it has been for the last 4 years. There are psyops that are getting ready to be launched and things of that nature. So it's done on purpose because Trump is coming into office, and there's going to be a lot more of this, and it's going to get harder and harder, which means that people are going to have to do their diligence and do their fact checking. And also you're going to have to fact check your fact check sources too. And discernment is going to be a big part of this.
Yeah, very well said. I think I mentioned here before, years ago, I wrote a piece of software that took a copy of everything that I read, and I had a very aggressive ad blocker so that it didn't skew the numbers. And on a daily basis, I was reading somewhere around 250 to 300,000 words a day. And I know you consume a huge volume. So does Jeff. And at the end of the day, not everybody has the time that we have to sift through all of this stuff. Not to mention the fact that I would hazard to guess that we're pretty good relative to, say, the median as far as people being able to determine BS or not. So I personally feel like one of the things that we do really well is we save people time by sifting through all the bullshit and giving them the real stuff, the truth, right? Because we're not influenced by big pharma, big tech, big media, or any of those guys.
Well,
So,
and we also back it up with fact.
correct, and that's why I harp on all the time about the sit rep and the brief for each episode. Everything's in there. Even our production notes are in there, just so people can see what we go off of. Now, you're familiar with our Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines, but for those people who aren't, they're highly polished documents, anywhere from 75 to 125 pages. Our Essentials Guide's 228 pages that you get for free when you sign up as a paying member of Survival Dispatch Insider. But when I say they're polished, that's what's going to happen to the sit rep and the brief that we use for these videos, so that if people don't have time to watch our podcast, they can just download the sit rep and consume it at their own pace. So, Jeff, I got a screen up here on another page from Statista, and this is which news sources do Americans trust? And I wish they had broken this down by age and not just red and blue. Okay. So I'm not surprised that Democrat leaning have more faith in legacy media than social media. But as far as, right leaning people, MAGA people, I don't know anybody. I seriously don't know a single person who's on the same page as us who believes a word that comes out of any legacy media. So I think these numbers in the middle are not right. It's anecdotal, and I realize the plural of anecdotal is not data. But Jeff, give me your thoughts on Democrats believing in legacy media versus Republicans believing in legacy media.
Well, first of all, I'll start this out with a story that my father used to tell me back in the day when I first got interested in things like this. You didn't have any way to go check on a magazine. So if Time said something, my father would always say, he said, listen, you have to understand who you're reading, who wrote the article, where the article came from, and then you have to have the power of discernment in order to figure out exactly what you believe and what you don't. And then if you don't believe it, you got to go find other pathways to go look it up. I think probably the Democrat leaning thing is right. Again, I'm kind of with you on the Republican leaning. The people that I hang around with, they don't believe anything. They don't even believe Fox. And so I think they would put their faith in something like Survival Dispatch. I think there are a lot of podcasts out there that we listen to. But I think nowadays, we always talk about that NASA computer in your back pocket. You have the ability to go find things if you're willing to do the legwork. And personally, when I read a book, because I'm so ADD, I will take that book, put it on audio, and I will listen to it when I'm training. A lot of people think I'm listening to music, and sometimes I am, but no, I'm listening to books. I think I listened to about half a Gulag Archipelago on audio, and people would look at me and wonder why I was acting the way I was acting, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So I don't necessarily go with these numbers, but I think a greater proportion of the people are starting to think that it's all BS.
I have a question, Chris, about this graph here.
Sure.
Does that the 78%, let's take the 78% at the top. Does that mean they believe it or they don't believe it?
They believe it. They trust the legacy media.
Okay.
So the dark column, it looks like it's dark blue on my screen, is the percentage of those particular people who believe in legacy media, and the purple is people who believe in social media. I have another problem with this, and I was going to come to you for this as well, as to Democrats and Republicans are two different sides of the same coin. I've been saying that for 25 freaking years. Now people want to call it the uniparty. I don't like seeing this Democrat versus Republican stuff because it's political theater as far as I'm concerned. And I think it should be divided more so like left, or I don't know what you would call it, but something over on the left and then something over on the conservative side, I think would make more sense. But now that we've got this up and you're in this conversation as to what do you think of that middle bucket showing 40% of Republicans, let's call them conservatives, believing in legacy media? I don't believe that number.
Well, I'll create the divide even more. Let's call them communists versus Americans.
Actually, that is a friggin' great way of looking at it.
If we look at it that way, I think that these numbers are probably a lot less as far as the middle bucket goes. Once again, I know a lot of people that look at this stuff and they say, actually, they come to me and they ask me what I think about it. And I just tell them, I said, you're going to have to do some of this digging around on your own, just like I do, if you really want to get to what the truth of something is. And they'll say, well, where do I go to look? And I'll give them a place to look. It's one of the reasons why I thought the Insiders channel that we have on Signal is so good, because if somebody wants to know what my source of information is, I'm happy to give it to them on that channel.
Yeah, I mean, you kick ass on there. No ifs, ands, or buts, no question. Back to a comment you made, Jeff, as far as your father saying, consider the source. And if you don't believe it, go find the truth. Prior to the World Wide Web, launching in 1994, and no, Al Gore did not invent the internet. It was actually ARPANET, started in 1968 by the military. But anyway, I digress. I used to say that a sign of intelligence wasn't the sum total of somebody's knowledge, but was the ability to find the answers to their questions. I no longer believe that, because we have a couple generations behind us now that it doesn't matter what the topic is. And yes, there are outliers. I'm not saying all of them, but there are a lot of people in the two generations after us who don't know anything on a particular subject. It comes up in a conversation, they go to their phone and pull it up on Google, and then they proudly profess that whatever is the truth. And it's just complete bullshit narrative spewed by Google, which, was and is a CIA project, and it's very curated narratives. And Google will turn your brain to absolute mush. It is a garbage product. We frequently tell people, like, Yandex is really good, yandex.com, and Brave Search. And S2 and I both go back and forth on those, but they're both far better alternatives than Google. So moving on to the next chart here. So where do people distrust news media? And this is an international diagram here. And some of this is kind of surprising for me. I'm not surprised that we rank, higher than all of these green countries as far as distrust is concerned, but I don't believe the numbers. The number of 16 to 20% of Americans distrusting the mainstream media, the legacy media, I just don't buy that number. I believe it's way higher than that. And if you go by this map, they're basically showing Turkey and Israel as the two red zones in the 28-41. I can't comment on them. I can tell you that my experience in Canada probably fits into that 10-15% range. They've been fed government-funded media forever and a day. They've got very strict rules, as a matter of fact, on even down to, say, the music level. When a radio station is playing music, they have to play X amount of Canadian bands, even if it's not good music. And they have to have X amount of Canadian content on the news. But their big news source is CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. And a lot of Canadians have been, drinking that Kool-Aid for far too long. But I'll go to you first, S2, and then Jeff. What's your interpretation of this global map, especially as it pertains to us?
We're out here in the world. We're not pollsters. We're not any of those folks. We don't gather statistics. We don't know what their methodology is for gathering these statistics. So it's very possible they could be skewed one way or the other, simply to paint an agenda set of statistics that would make people think one way to drive them to the direction where they want them to be driven to. So in this case, we'll take the United States as an example. 16 to 20% distrust news media. Okay, so that means we're in the middle. Chances are we're probably more up in that 21 to 27 percentile. They're trying to keep people in the middle in order to do exactly that, to keep people united within the country and not skew those numbers to say, okay, we don't trust the media at all.
Refresh my memory, because I know I'm going to get this wrong. Either one of you can correct me. but there was an old adage or an old saying that said something like there's numbers, there's statistics, and there's lies, or something to that effect. Does that ring a bell with either of you?
A bell would be about it. Yeah. Yeah. I would tend to go with that as to they're all lies. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Jeff, how do you interpret this map, and do you think it's directionally correct or not?
I don't buy it at all. And to be honest with you, that 16 to 20%, I think that's way too low. And I would actually put them up to 28 to 41%. And I think some of these people, I say some of these people, excuse me, some people on either side of the aisle, they have backed themselves up into a corner. So whether they actually believe it or not, they're going to support it because it backs their platform. I have looked up something today. S2, you were talking about communism a minute ago. I totally agree. I wrote up a whole thing on Marxism regarding this very subject. But in a book called the ABC of Communism, there was a Bolshevik theoretician named Nikolai Bukharin. And he wrote, the state propaganda of communism becomes, in the long run, a means for the eradication of the last traces of bourgeois propaganda dating from the old regime, and its powerful instrument for the creation of a new ideology, of new modes of thought, of a new outlook on the world. And I would take that one step farther, as into erase history, one small step at a time, to erase history as we know it and create their own history. And we look at that and we go, well, you think about 5 generations, 2 generations down the line, what have they been hearing and what are they going to believe? And then, there we are, we're stuck. And then we've got like in China, we've got the Great Leap Forward, or an attempt at the Great Leap Forward. And there's only one way to put that down, and it doesn't end well for anybody.
Yeah, well said, Jeff, indeed. Before I pull up the next one here, the first 3 people who send an email to support@survivaldispatch.com with one word in the subject, insider, gets a free 12-month paying membership for Survival Dispatch on Patreon. All right, moving on to the next one. So I feel that this one's pretty subjective as well, where false information is posing the biggest threat. And I don't want to read everything off of the screen here. Again, it's in the brief. Go get the brief, and all the info is there. You can kind of digest it on your own. But this I think does a little bit more justice for us. It shows us in that bucket of being either 4th, 5th, or 6th, like in the top 6 at least. And first is India over here, and I don't know what that little tiny country is over the other side of India. I'm sure one of you guys know. I think this one, again, is subjective, but I think it's more accurate than the previous 2 were, as far as where false information is definitely posing a threat. I mean, look at the chasm it's created in our country. So S2, I'll go to you first. Just give me your high-level thoughts on this particular graphic.
Well, if we take the first 2 graphics that we looked at, they don't match up. So if they don't match up, then I'd say this 3rd graphic is even more full of shit than the other ones were.
Quite possibly.
It's made by the same company. So
yeah, I mean, quite possibly. I find this one, I think, is a little bit more believable than the other 2. In reality, and I'm not an expert on India, but in reality, I'd say we're probably number 1 in the world where false information poses the biggest threat, because we're the superpower. We're the biggest, baddest kid on the block. And so there's more at stake when false information is put out there in America versus some of the other countries. That, again, subjective opinion on my part. It's just the way I feel. Jeff, how do you interpret this?
Well, I don't disagree. I think, by the way, those countries, that's a group of several countries to the, I guess that would be the east of India. And I think that Bangladesh is right there in the middle. Okay. And I just looked at a map just so you don't think I'm a big geography guy. But I think that, they foment fear. And so I think that number 1, I think the red should actually be on America. I'm sorry, I really do, because they foment fear with everything they do. And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. They're fomenting fear. Fear causes a reaction. And because people don't want to We talk about this all the time. They don't want to do their due diligence. They don't want to take the time to actually learn something, and they abdicate their ability to reason or to make decisions. And I think in one of your briefs it said critical thinking, and so we lack that. And I think that number's a lot higher. I think America's red, and I think because we're the beacon of hope in the world, according to everybody, we're the beacon of hope in the world, and you instill fear and bring us down to a point where we can no longer act or react, then you've accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish from the get-go. So
right on. Hey, S2, how does my mic level sound to you?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. All right. Appreciate it.
As an add-on to what Jeff said, if you look at the countries that are in the red or in the higher percentile levels, there's also a large history within those countries of distrusting media in the first place. India is kind of interesting because a lot of the information that I come across actually happens to come out of India. And a lot of the information that's coming out of India is actually true. Not all of it, but a considerable chunk of it comes out of that. So if I look at where it poses the most threat, I look at the Five Eyes country, like Great Britain, the United States, and so forth, because those are the military targets of the world that everybody goes after. So to your point, I think, yes, we should be in the red in Great Britain. I'm not really sure about them. They're kind of a bunch of pansies now, but anyway.
Right. England is lost. So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going off of memory, but the Five Eyes is essentially 5 developed countries that coordinate intelligence efforts together. Great Britain, Canada, United States, New Zealand, and Australia is my recollection. I could be wrong, but that's
correct. But I think there's actually more. I think it's more like 7 eyes now.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense as well. So, all right, we're going to jump into this list of from justfactsdaily.com, by the way, of fake news stories. We've got about, call it 46, 47 minutes. We'll cover this stuff. We'll get as far down the list as we can. So I'm going to refrain from playing a bunch of videos with it. These are all stories that we're all familiar with. So Margaret Brennan and John Dickerson of CBS News claimed that the president of the United States has nothing to do with the price of bacon or eggs or gas or any of it. In fact, presidents inflate the prices of virtually everything through federal deficits that spur inflation, regulations that prohibit the use of cost-effective production methods and resources, price and wage controls, trade deals, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think what we'll do with this one, just so we can get through as many as possible, we'll handle this like we handle the news headlines. One will go to US2, and the next one will go to Jeff. So I'll start with US2, inflation.
That's not true. Where the inflation comes from is the regulations and the budgets that Congress vote on to make those things happen. Now we have extemporaneous things that happen, like for instance, we had all of these fires at food processing plants in the last several years. So of course, when you have those types of events that occur, unfortunately, that creates a situation of scarcity. And when you create that situation of scarcity, that has a reaction as well, where people go out and they buy a bunch of stuff to stock up on the stuff that they're saying is scarce now, and that drives the cost of goods up. So saying the president has a direct effect on that is just a bunch of horse shit.
Well, let's tackle this from a slightly different angle. I would argue that all the free stimulus money was a big part of inflation under the Biden administration. And then the next piece would be keeping it very, very low federal rates, the Fed for lending rates. I think the stimulus money and the interest rates, which are definitely under the executive's purview, really skewed inflation under this administration. You can counter that, or we can go to Jeff.
The stimulus money, I would have to say, is that was actually an act of Congress that created that. He just signed whatever was put in front of him. Now, I will say that tariffs do have an effect, and once again, that's all of these things are acts of Congress, or should be acts of Congress, not done by executive order. Executive orders are just nice suggestions.
And I think, though, I'd keep in mind that with everybody now being aware that Joe Biden hasn't been playing with a full deck long before 2020, that this has clearly been Obama's third term, and Obama, his cabinet wrote all of the laws, essentially gave them to Congress for Congress to basically pass them for funding, then sign them when they came back across his desk. Based on this current installed administration, I would say that Obama is got his fingerprints all over the inflation problem, because he's a diehard Marxist. And when you give money away for free, it spikes inflation like nuts. Anyway, moving on to the next one. So the bloodbath hoax, kind of like the Fine People hoax, reporting on the first assassination attempt against Donald Trump, George Stephanopoulos and Martha Raddatz of ABC News claimed that Trump contributed to violent rhetoric because he said it's going to be a bloodbath if I don't get elected. In fact, Trump didn't use the term bloodbath as a call to violence, but to describe the effects of Biden's policies, especially on the auto industry. This clearly manipulated media is why I keep coming back to broadcast licenses. They purposely edited video again and audio to suit their narrative, and it's a bald-faced lie. And I feel that we've got to put a stop to that. And I've pretty much settled on the court system that if somebody's being sued civilly, that the FCC should have the right to get involved and also pursue repercussions from the same judge related to the same action to slap them on the wrist and potentially, put their broadcast license at risk. Go ahead, Jeff.
I think anybody with any sense would realize that when Donald Trump said that, that's not what he meant, that there wasn't going to be wild mass revolt of car dealers all across the United Nation coming to arms and destroying everybody, any more than I think when he said, what he said about the bleach, that you're going to stick bleach up your behind or you're going to drink it out of a bottle. I think that and the things that they will take into an account when we say an interview and the editing that goes on with those interviews, and they've proved this time and time and time again. They manipulate the interviews with regard to content and order and leaving things out and putting things in, and they do not give you the truth. And they just basically bend it to what they want it to believe they want you to believe, and so we end up hearing parsed sections of things that really didn't happen. I would like to comment on S2. One of the things S2 said was like he doesn't really have the power except through executive order, but I will always go back to this, and it's fuel prices. And you got to think, if today, if you raise the prices high enough where one of those wheat thrashers takes in enough wheat in 2 hours to make 10,000 loaves of bread. Think about that if we were hauling that out by horse and buggy. And they have to have that, but to artificially manufacture a raise in price by cutting down on a pipeline or not renewing leases in fields, because if you grew up in Texas some too, Chris, and I can remember falling asleep by the pump jacks at night, and it was a big deal when oil left because schools went down. A lot of things changed in the area we were at. So I think to add to what S2 said, because you guys are so much more in tune with this than I am. I think that the dysfunctional attitude we have with regard to energy production in the United States. And Obama even said it. And he said, and I think not in so many words, but he also said the people in Africa didn't deserve to have the energy to be able to light their huts, or it's a horrible problem they have down there. And so anyway, I didn't mean to go off on that, but I don't take anything the media says serious. On that whole bloodbath thing, I had Democratic friends going ape, you know what? Oh my God, Trump said drink bleach. I said, you're a moron. That's basically it.
So I'm not going to name the compound because it will for sure get us a strike, and we've already got a couple of them that we've got to get off of our docket. Right, you get a strike, it sticks with you for 90 days. If you get 3 strikes inside of 90 days, you're done. Your channel gets deleted. So we've had 2 strikes in the past 60 days, so we got to get through this next little bit with no strikes to keep the channel alive on YouTube. Of course, no problems on X, Rumble, Cloud Hub, etc. But the bleach comment is because people were confused over the name of this compound, and this compound has saved friends of mine from stage 4 cancer. We're talking a person who was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 14. At the age of 40, 6 foot tall, 106 pounds, told that he wouldn't live for 4 weeks. Took this concoction. His doctor actually took him to Mexico for it. Walked back into the oncology department 4 weeks later, 50 pounds heavier and 100% cancer free. And I'm not going to reveal any names. If he wants to say so, he can. But one of our most loyal followers was then sent this compound. He's in the chat tonight on a couple different platforms even. And so my friend sent one of our followers a package of this compound, and he did the protocol and went into oncology, and they were like, we have no explanation for this, but the tumor is done. It's gone. It's no longer active. And I mean, they were basically suggesting prior to that he was going to have surgery and have a kidney removed and so on and so forth. So all I wanted to get at there is was confusion over this name of this compound, which works really, really well for a lot of different things, a lot of different diseases that affect humans. So and you know what? It would take all of 30 seconds of research for somebody to punch in the name of that compound to any search engine, including garbage Google, and realize that it has nothing to do with bleach, not even remotely related to that. But we'll move on from there. Next one for you, S2. We've covered this topic multiple times on SDN. Crime trends. PolitiFact reported that violent crime rate today is near a 50-year low. In fact, that claim is derived from FBI data, which is based on voluntary reports of crimes by state and local law enforcement agencies, and excludes crimes like sexual assault, simple assault, attempted robberies, and crimes not reported to law enforcement. The DOJ's National Crime Victimization Survey, which is widely considered to be the gold standard for measuring crime trends, showed a 37% increase in violent crime from 2020 to 2023. Moreover, the latest rate of murder, which is the best measured and worst of violent crimes, was 36% higher in 2023 than in 2014. So I don't want to skew what S2 has to say, but I've got a couple comments on this after he takes a run at it. Go ahead, S2.
There's only one thing I can say. FB lie.
That's good. So I'll throw my comment out there then, and you can run with it. And that is at the direction of this, Obama shadow admin, major cities like Chicago that are also Democrat controlled were told not to report their crime rates. And then the Democrats went on this whole thing of saying, look at this, crime is falling dramatically. Well, number one, the data wasn't handed over to the FBI for the annual crime rates. And number two, the Soros-backed DAs, which are significant in number, stopped pursuing charges for all kinds of stuff that would clearly show a massive increase in crime. So that's my comment on that. I don't know if you want to add to that or not, S2. It's your call.
Well, if I also recall, the FBI came out and said, oh, yeah, our data is actually skewed. We made a mistake. And they had to make corrections to their data when they came out with their latest crime report.
I don't believe that. The FBI never makes mistakes. Never.
No? Oh,
No,
man.
No, never. Yeah.
Blew my whole perception.
Yeah. Nice try. All right. So this one is brutal, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this, Jeff. Jobs. The New York Times reported that President Biden is presiding over a job creation boom that would have gotten almost any of his predecessors reelected in the post-war era. In fact, all real job growth under Biden went to immigrants, while jobs held by people born in the USA barely recovered from COVID lockdowns and are drastically below their pre-COVID trajectory and flatlined over the past year. So here's the graph on jobs given to immigrants. Of course, this is the big COVID shutdown. And here's what it looks like for, I hate to use the term Native Americans because everybody thinks Aboriginal, but born in the U.S. Take a run at this, Jeff.
You're on mute.
Yep.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying not to breathe into the microphone.
It's all good.
Oh, yeah, I got my nose breather. When the jobs came down, and we literally could sit here in Frisco, and I'm just going to use this as an example. There's a big street here called Preston Road. Preston Road runs down through the middle of town, and that road is it is horrible to get on, especially with the way the infrastructure is changing here and the amount of people we have in Frisco. That being said, when one day, and at the very beginning of this COVID lockdown, I pulled up to a place on Preston Road at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I waited 7 or 8 minutes before I even saw a car. Okay, so again, we go back to the fear thing, right? And so the jobs fell off, and everybody was working from home. Kids were staying at school. School buses weren't running. They fomented so much terror and so much fear. And the fact that, hell, I could have been president and made the jobs go back up just by some of those issues going away. So, kudos to them for trying to take credit for it. But what they're counting on everybody in America being stupid or just going to go, okay, whatever. And buddy, me and you both know, people know that it's BS. And besides, if you're going to take credit for the good stuff, you really need to man up and take credit for the bad stuff. And there's plenty of it.
I've said for years, Jeff, I believe that people should always take credit for everything they do, good, bad, or otherwise. So it's interesting to say that. I would add one additional thing as well, is that they very purposely kept skewing the job reports. So in September, this administration tried to claim that there were 800,000 new jobs created in September. And then shortly after the election, they were like, oh, actually, we made a mistake, and there were no jobs created in September. So just more of the same old BS. But we'll move on to the border wall, and you next, S2. So Axios reported that Kamala Harris pledged to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the wall along the southern border. In fact, Harris said nothing of the sort, but Axios inferred this based on her support of a bill that makes funds available for a border barrier, but doesn't actually require it to be built. Such funds were appropriated in prior years, but were not used by the Biden administration. So clearly trying to make her look better than what she was. But comments on the border wall, S2?
I think 10 Grizz on YouTube says it the best. I have more faith in the virginity of Vegas hookers than MSM or any government agency.
That's the comment of the night. That's going to be a tough one to top.
Yeah, I give up. I got nothing. That was great.
Yeah, that's too funny. Great. All right, so school shootings. We'll go to you on this one, Jeff. The Associated Press and reams of other media outlets reported that J.D. Vance said school shootings are a fact of life. In fact, Vance said that psychos who want to make headlines are a fact of life, not school shootings. He then said, we've got to bolster security at our schools. And I remember when this happened, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but golly, here's another example of them purposefully editing what somebody has said to make it sound like they said something completely different. There have to be repercussions for this. They cannot continue to get away with outright lies like this and just say, oh, well, it's their First Amendment right. Well, you know what? They should also have the right to lose their license and have their ass suit off. Thoughts on his comments, Jeff?
I don't hate JD. I think one of the things in that Martha Radich interview when he was talking about the guys in apartment complexes in Denver, and she was talking about, just a small group. It's just a small group of people performing those acts, and he's like, "What are you even talking about?" I think, again, they should be held accountable for these comments because it's not helping anything. Who doesn't think a school shooting is horrible? But if that's the case, why do they continue to put these people's name in the news, which they do, and with great redundancy, they put their names in the news, and they always give a middle name. You notice that? Like
Yes, they all have three names, right?
they all have three names, and
Yeah.
then they all have a manifesto, and but you can kind of tell a lot about the way they report it or don't report it when those reports do come out as to the ideology or the mentality of a person. Because let's face it, it does take a psycho to do that. But they have their ethos. They have an ethos that they're living by, and it's not something you would really want anybody to live by. But they continue to try to blame it on something that it's not. Those people are just nuts, and that's why they do things like that. And unfortunately, I don't really know what to say or do about it other than more security at schools.
More security at schools and more resources for mental illness. So one statistic to look at is that in 1950, we had somewhere around 550,000 inpatient beds in psychiatric institutions, asylums, essentially, right? And we now have less than 40,000 inpatient beds. And they're not all in asylums. They're not all in psychiatric care buildings, but they've put them into regular hospitals and don't have the same level of care there either. But this boils down to, in a large part, to a lot of mental illness. I want to move on because I'm looking at the time. We got about 18 minutes left to get through however many of these we can. But I want to go to US2 and in general speak to the lies proffered by the legacy media in general with regards to school shootings, because this is something I know that you track on a regular basis. You're on mute, S2.
School shootings, yeah, that was
Paging S2. S2, can you hear me? We lost your audio. Just holler whenever you're functional again, S2, and Jeff and I'll keep moving on until your audio is restored. So number 7 on this list is Fauci's record. MSNBC Lawrence O'Donnell claimed that no one in our lifetimes has saved more lives than Anthony Fauci. In fact, Fauci may have killed more people than anyone in our lifetimes. And I won't read the rest of it here because I know for a fact that'll put us into that twilight zone with YouTube in particular. Jeff, a high-level view on Fauci and the role he played through that mess.
So if you go to the second one there, the second greatly overstated the COVID-19 death rate, promoting mass hysteria. I mean, that's what you got to, that's really, think about that, okay? And they did. They totally drove that narrative home day after day after day after day. And there were stories coming out like the morgues in New York, where there were bodies stacked up 5 to 10 people high in refrigerated trucks because they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. They kept families from their loved ones in situations where they may have been dying. I know when I was in the hospital with COVID for about 10 days. I had double pneumonia, and I saw no one. The only people I saw was the nurse or nurses, and talked to people on the phone. But the fact of the matter is, they kept on about the whole thing. Wow, don't you wish you'd have been vaccinated now? And I'm no, I don't. I really don't. And Fauci is the prevaricator of this. He drove this narrative, and everybody fell behind him lockstep. And he needs to have a come to Jesus moment on that, because I think this guy could you can make a case for putting him away somewhere. My opinion. Lost your audio, Chris.
You're on mute, Chris.
Oh, yeah, you're on mute.
That doesn't happen very often. Okay, S2, we've got your audio back. Speak to school shootings in general, just as far as the fake news is concerned and the underreporting or total derogation of reporting.
Well, the school shootings, yeah, that was a thing. But if we recall, the shootings actually started at a grocery store up in Buffalo, New York, when all of that garbage
Mhm.
started.
Mhm.
So what you ended up with then is that person that was the suspect that was involved in that was shot and killed. And from there, I think what we saw was people thinking that, okay, well, this guy, dead or alive, got attention. And with the school shootings that were going on, and and then it started through the Charlie 19 era, and it just kept going and going and going. And I think really what was going on here is there was a lot of things that were happening with people's mental health. And I think largely what we're seeing now is people had a psychotic break.
Mm.
They literally had a psychotic break, and I don't think they know how to deal with life in general as far as reality.
That's
So
that's a fair comment.
so
Absolutely.
what to do about it, as you said, more security at schools, more resources. I don't even know about more resources for mental health. I would say quality resources, because what we get nowadays is you walk into a psychologist's office, some of them have the ability to write prescriptions, and that's what they do. They just think, oh, well, you've got depression, I'm going to write you a prescription for this and you'll be hunky dory. And then all of a sudden you're depressed again and say, oh, well, let me give you this for an upper. And it's the same vicious cycle that goes on with these drugs all over, is that they give you something to bring you up, they give you something to take you down.
Yeah,
And
but
it just never stops, and it screws with
correct.
your brain cancer or
Yeah.
brain chemistry. Sorry.
Chemistry, yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. I'm gonna run through a handful of these just so we get a little bit further down the list before we change gears to chapter 2. So, republic versus democracy. The Atlantic. So, the Atlantic, by the way, is Steve Jobs' widow, and it's nothing but absolute pure hardcore Marxist, socialist, communist bullshit. But anyway, the Atlantic's Anne Applebaum, a Pulitzer-winning historian, claimed that America is a democracy and that there isn't a meaningful difference between a democracy and a republic. And that is just complete and utter bullshit. A democracy is essentially mob rule. And it's funny that they said that in here, because I use that description all the time. So we are a republic, we are not a democracy, and we have safeguards against mob rule. And one of them is the brilliance of the Electoral College. The only bone that I have to pick on that is that they should have taken the Electoral College system down to the state and county level, because we've got all these states. Illinois is a great example. Whatever Cook County votes for, all of Illinois has to live with it. And the same in Virginia. You get Richmond, Virginia, and the stuff up top near DC, and everybody else has no voice. But anyways, you would think somebody with her credentials would know better, but she didn't. Number 9, handled by the military. CNN's Jake Tapper reported that Donald Trump said that as commander-in-chief, he will contemplate using the United States military or National Guard to go after his political opponents, including Democrats like Adam Schiff. And this is another example. I'm going to keep hammering on this, of these are outright lies. This is not reporting. This is fabricated content that they manipulate and they edit to say something that is completely the opposite of what was said by somebody like Trump. So, in fact, Trump was answering a question about agitators who would sow chaos on election day, like the Afghan refugee charged with plotting a U.S. election day massacre. He was not talking about Americans who don't support him, but sick people, radical left lunatics who've rioted, committed arson, and murdered people. Furthermore, he was discussing or speaking in regards to the 2024 election, while the military is not under his command. Huge lie. Number 10, Biden family business dealings. MSNBC's Nicole Wallace reported it is a conspiracy theory that Hunter Biden profited from business dealings in Ukraine with the help of his father. Complete and utter bullshit. There's a ton of evidence out there. He's getting $83,000 a month, which translates to $1 million a year from Burisma for doing absolutely nothing in industry, energy, that he had no knowledge or anything on it. Ukraine's been the biggest money laundering operation ever. I'm going to do 2 more, and then I'm going to come to you, Jeff. Firing squad. Matt Young of the Daily Beast reported that Donald Trump talked about putting Liz Cheney in front of a firing squad. In an article headline, Trump fantasizes about shooting female rival in the face. He said no such thing, and it is so easy to verify that he said no such thing. He said that Cheney would not be a radical war hawk if she were serving in combat with 9 barrels shooting at her instead of sitting in Washington. And he's absolutely right. She can sit there on her high horse and make all these bullshit claims and platitudes. And all he was saying, if you put her in the trenches of war, she probably wouldn't be so in favor of war. I mean, again, these are bald-faced lies. Number 12, radicalized killings. The Associated Press reported that deputies in Florida burst into the wrong apartment and fatally shot a black man when they saw he was armed with a gun. In fact, the AP selectively highlights people's races in cases where blacks are killed by whites or police. The AP has done that 60 plus times on X and never done the opposite, even though black on white murders are 2 to 3 times more common than vice versa. All right, Jeff, this is a good one for you. The bipartisan border bill, all this did was codify somewhere in the range of 5,000 illegals per day, and whatever that translates into a couple million a year sort of thing. But in a fact check of the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, PolitiFact reported, Harris was correct that Trump helped kill a bipartisan border security bill. In fact, the crux of Harris' argument was that Trump killed the bill because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. Trump actually opposed the bill because it was laced with loopholes that codify open border policies, which has already fueled the worst border crisis in history. And only one Republican, which is kind of, crazy because there's a lot of rhinos in Congress, ultimately voted for it. Give me your thoughts on this, Jeff. I personally think the whole thing was a planned strategy on the part of Obama, Pelosi, Schumer, etc., because they knew that Trump would never allow a bill to be put in place to say, 5,000 illegals a day. Sure, no problem. The numbers don't add up.
No, I totally agree with that. And one of the things that they had talked about was if we go back to the wall for a minute, when the ball was up, people say, well, the wall, why would you put up a wall? And I don't think they understand it's because choke points. You can't just come across the border to any place and claim asylum. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. So you have to direct those people into the ports of entry, and the ports of entry are typically where they always come in. And so the border wall wasn't to cut people off from coming in and out of the United States. What it was is to funnel that to a controllable level. And when he went out of office, Biden killed the bill on the first day. And I think what we look at when we see those policies you're talking about, I definitely believe they're coming from Obama. I believe that this whole circuit between Rice, Obama, and Biden and the White House, I think that's problematic if you think about it. And when you bring those people into the country, you can only really be thinking about one thing. They're going to drive the wages down in the United States. Is the first thing's going to happen. I don't even have to say it. It's true. It's done it already. But the other thing is you're looking for another voting base. You're looking for your voter base because all the states now, I'm not sure how many it was at last count, are attempting to allow illegal immigrants to vote.
Yeah. So the voting aspect of it, I believe, is primarily driven by the fact that Democrats don't have kids or have very few kids. So the writing is on the wall that the number of Democrats, for example, will continue to decline if they don't bring in fresh blood. And if they give a bunch of freebies away to illegals, then the line of thinking is that they'll become lifetime Democrat voters. I actually want to back up to the wall just for a second with US too. That before that, by the way, is the holidays. I'm feeling generous. The next 3 people who send an email to me, support@survivaldispatch.com with the words free membership in the subject line will get a 12-month free Survival Dispatch Insider membership. S2, give me your thoughts on just a standalone border wall versus a border wall that is manned and also equipped with all kinds of real-time sensors.
Well, it's kind of a proven fact that the wall doesn't work by itself. No wall does. I mean, even the Great Wall of China, when they built that was a manned wall.
Mm-hmm. Well said.
I mean, you have an inanimate object that isn't going to do anything, and no matter how hard you make to climb it, go through it, go under it, people are still going to find a way to do it. You have to find a way to stop that activity, period. So yeah, I say take I say take 500 yards on either side of the wall
Mhm.
and do like they did in Guantanamo Bay and put mines there, put landmines there. First person that steps on one will be a deterrent for the next person that comes along.
Yeah, quite likely. So before we move on, S2, are there any other examples other than, say, the Berlin Wall? Because that one, if anybody from East Germany tried to get anywhere near the wall and get to West Germany, they just shot and killed them. They didn't even give warning shots. So there's an example of a wall that was manned that was very effective at stopping people from crossing it. Can you think of anything else in modern history, say the last couple hundred years, that's similar to that, where a manned wall worked? I can't. I'm not saying there isn't. I just can't think of another one.
Not right off the top of my head. I'm sure there are examples of it, but
Fair enough.
like you said, between East and West Germany was probably the best example.
Okay. Moving on to the next one, late-term abortions. This one comes to you, S2. NBC's Kristen Welker reported that abortions later in pregnancy, 21 weeks and after, are extremely rare and usually only take place in the case of a health emergency. In fact, approximately 15,000 late-term abortions per year are performed in the United States at 21 weeks or later, and roughly 80% of them are not for health reasons, but purely elective. Run with that, Eston.
So this was during the time, I believe, when Roe versus Wade was overturned. And actually, no, it wasn't. Maybe it was. At any rate, this is not about statistics. This is about where you're getting your facts from. And I don't think anybody ever questions these people about their supporting facts to the statements that they make. And as far as this problem goes, abortion is murder. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what period of time during a pregnancy it occurs. It is murder. We have a morality problem. People need to learn to keep it in their pants versus just going and being promiscuous and doing whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it with no consequences in their life.
Let's combine these, S2. So let's combine 14 late-term abortions, 15 abortions up until birth. So PolitiFact reported that Democrats don't support abortion on demand up to birth because they only support such abortions if the pregnancy poses a risk to health. In fact, 99% of congressional Democrats voted for bills that would legalize all abortions up till birth if any abortionist merely says it is for health. And then number 16, live birth abortions. I think back to Northam in Virginia, saying that it's perfectly okay. Like if you don't want the baby and you end up giving birth, we will just abort them after they're born. Well, I mean, you want to talk murder. How do you kill a live being, whether it's in the mother's womb or not? It is absolutely murder. So go ahead and roll with up those two as well, S2, and then we'll move on.
These people are just evil. You can't look at it any other way. I mean, it's a fact. They did say that, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll give you an abortion if you have a live born child. And if we look at all of this stuff of what abortion really is, these days it's not about trying to save the woman's life. You know, these days we've heard about this all over the place. They're harvesting the organs and the tissues of these children, and they're using them in scientific research and a number of other things. They use them for skin grafts and things like that, and plastic surgery. It is an industry. And Margaret Sanger was the one that started this, and it was originally started to target the black population because she felt them to be genetically inferior. And it just happened to turn into something else where they say, hey, we can make money doing this. And that's really what it is. Murder is for hire now, and they've made it legal.
Yeah. So I'm going to take number 17. I'm going to go to you, Jeff, for number 18. Come back to S2 for number 19, and then we're going to move on to chapter 2. So, presidential immunity journalist Ron Flipikowski reported that a Republican Supreme Court has ruled that presidents who commit crimes in office can't be prosecuted, and we have an incoming president who loves committing crimes. In fact, the ruling prevents current presidents from abusing their power to prosecute their predecessors for carrying out official actions within their constitutional authority. Without such immunity, the Trump administration could prosecute Biden for illegally transferring student loans from borrowers to taxpayers. Before Biden took control of the DOJ, such matters were always settled by lawsuits, not prosecutions. I just have one comment I want to make on this presidential immunity stuff. The Supreme Court ruling on this dictates that Judge Merchan has got to drop the charges against Trump, which, let's be honest, you had misdemeanors that the statute of limitations had expired. Then they mashed them all together to try to say that it was a felony without ever naming the law, the felony law. And then Merchan gave the jury instructions and said, listen, on the first count, if 4 of you say he's guilty, and then the second count, another 4 say he's guilty, and then on the third count, another 4 say he's guilty, I'll just add that up. That's 12. We'll call that a unanimous decision, and we'll convict on that. That is a gross misrepresentation of our legal system. And he knows it, because the reason you see on Survival Dispatch News, the truth is a footnote, find it here, is because Democrats are always pursuing the next headline, regardless of whether or not something gets reversed, because they teach their lemmings, the sheeple, to memorize and regurgitate these talking points. And so Merchan was asked recently to drop the shit, and he won't do it. And, you know, so the next part to that, by the way, is one, he's been a strong donator to the Democrats, and his daughter this year in 2024 has taken in millions of dollars from Democrat PACs. He shouldn't even be on the case. It's absolutely disgusting what this guy's done. And I can tell you that Todd Callender, my good friend, the very notorious attorney, his researchers are pretty convinced that he's not even a full citizen, that he may have come on some sort of visa and ended up with a green card, but not even a legitimate citizen. Yet he's trying to put Donald Trump in jail. And they did prepare Rikers for that, but I don't think it's going to happen, because we'd be in the midst of a civil war. All right, quid pro quo for you, Jeff. The Atlantic Steve from claimed that Donald Trump tried to blackmail Ukraine's Zelensky to produce dirt on the Biden family. In fact, a transcript of the call where this allegedly occurred shows that Trump did nothing of the sort. Meanwhile, smoking gun emails prove that Joe Biden withheld U.S. aid from the Ukraine to ensure that a prosecutor who was investigating Hunter Biden's financial benefactor was fired. So here's what I find crazy about this. The 51 intelligence experts, the mainstream media said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation, and that there was no such improprieties in any way whatsoever related to Ukraine. And then Joe Biden just gave his son a pardon for the shenanigans in Ukraine that were used to impeach Donald Trump. How's that for craziness? So it's all you, Jeff.
So, first of all, we could even go back a little farther and talk about the Steele document. Okay, we talk about people dragging up, lying and drag up stuff that didn't even happen, paying tons of money to people with no credibility and even less credibility now. Mm-hmm. And some of them paid a price for it. But again, we talked about this last week, I think, or the week before last. They do something, but they don't pay a price for it. They more than often they get either money or they get promoted. Like Kamala's getting a book deal now for $20 million for a book deal. Are you kidding me? For what? But we go back to Trump, and they came out with all these things they were saying, and they were merely, and it's obvious, it's got to be obvious to people, they were merely trying to cover their tracks, because they knew the potential for disaster was waiting right there for him, and Trump was calling them on it. I think sometimes insiders like that, and especially when Trump, when he was in that position, probably knew a lot about what was going on, because you probably just got to think that guy has a ton of contacts everywhere with really good information, and so he knew. And Trump did the right thing as far as I'm concerned. because that Ukrainian company, not just let's talk about the Chinese too. That Burisma, man, that was a fake from the beginning, and they need to be held accountable. I'll go back to that same thing. They need to be held accountable.
So somewhat related, you get the last word as to on all of the Russia collusion bullshit.
They should have called it bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, what they started with General Flynn, and they say that it started because of 4 people in Trump's orbit that had these sketchy ties to the Russians. Well, you know what? Let's use General Flynn as that example. General Flynn's job was to deal with these people, and like them, good or bad, that was his job, and he had to do some things in his job description that made him deal with those things. So if they wanted to use that as an example for investigating Trump because of people doing their jobs within their job description, then that was just a bullshit reason. And we know it's a bullshit reason. So, yeah.
100% as to. Well said. All right. So that's the end of chapter 1. We've got a short message from our friends at Sawyer Products, and we will be right back.
The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
So everybody on our team, big fans of Sawyer Products. Their water filters are by far the best on the market. They're American made, and they're just a fantastic company, that very altruistic company. So great products, American made, and very giving to those people who are in need. So what we'll do is we get into chapter 2 here. Jeff, I'll go to you first, and then we'll go to S2 after that. And the first story is ongoing problems in the New York City subway and violence. Now, this one is from yesterday, but there was another one today where there's a guy standing there reading his phone beside the tracks, and this other guy comes up behind him, pushes him into the path of the train. Last I heard, he was just hanging by a thread at the hospital. But in general, give me your thoughts on this explosion of subway violence. And here's the thing. I've seen people who live in New York say that this stuff's been happening for a very long time. It just hasn't been reported. So what we see is an explosion because we're not there. In reality, they're saying this is just everyday life in the subways of New York.
I could totally follow that logic. I competed in New York a couple of times and regretted not going on the subway, but not really. But listen, I got off the bus at Penn Station one time, and 2 girls had advised me. I was going to a competition, a bodybuilding competition there, and a girl advised me, don't talk to anybody, don't look at anybody when you get off the bus, because we had flown into Newark and took the bus into Penn Station. And I promise you, I got off the bus and I glanced at somebody, Chris. I just barely glanced at him, and he looks at me, and I'm going to quote this, and it's a cuss word. He goes, "What are you looking at, you son of a bitch?" And I'm like, holy smoke, it's real. They're not kidding. And the 3 or 4 times that I've been up there, I can't believe more stuff doesn't happen. But I'm totally was having this conversation with someone today. Totally believe that it was so underreported because that economy is so very much relies on tourism and out of state, out of city, out of state money to keep it going and to keep the businesses and shops going. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're underreporting. What surprises me is that they're actually reporting it now, because this has been the last couple of 2 or 3 weeks has been a pretty big deal.
Well, I would posit that there's been a lot more citizen engagement on X in particular. So, for example, if you were to put the video up of that poor lady being burned, which she's been identified now, it was not the 29, 30-year-old girl, it was a 57-year-old lady. But if you put that up anywhere else, like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, they're going to take the content down and potentially delete your account as well for gratuitous violence, is what they would say. And now that stuff can fly on X, I think a lot of it's getting out as a result of that. I think Elon is right in saying we are the media. Now, with that being said, I don't know if it's in this sit rep or tomorrow's sit rep, but Elon Musk and his team are doing some very shady things on X, taking away people's blue check mark who have disagreed with him on the H-1B stuff, and going even further and demonetizing their accounts and taking away the ability for people to subscribe to premium content. I never was 100% on Elon Musk. I want to give him credit for potentially restoring a portion of free speech. But you know what? Right now, what's happening on X with some very prominent accounts is just flat out wrong. And it's no better than what the, predecessors did there. So with that being said, I did want to mention a couple things, Jeff. One of them was that Victor Avila was one of the two ICE agents shot up in Mexico during the Fast and Furious thing. They were set up, right? They were in Mexico. They were told to go to a meeting down Highway 58, which is called the Highway of Death. Nobody uses Highway 58 except for the cartels. And they got surrounded by cartel vehicles. They got shot up hundreds of times. And his partner, Agent Zapata, died in his arms. It's a miracle that Victor survived. Victor now is a preeminent subject matter expert on gangs like Tren de Aragua. And he said the difference between these gangs and years gone by is that if you even look at them sideways, they go 0 to 100 instantly, and to really avoid them at all costs, because if they think that you are staring at them, they think that you're talking about them, anything like that, they go straight to shooting you. There's no arguing or anything in between. The other thing I wanted to quickly add, the book deal you mentioned for Kamala, I don't know the specifics, but I know that in one of his last days in office, Obama gave Penguin Publishing $300 million grant. And a couple months after he was out of office, Penguin gave him a $60 million book deal. So they've been laundering money like that forever and a day. All right, S2, moving on to you here. No surprise, H-1B visa workers vastly underpaid compared to Americans. And all kinds of people defending H-1Bs have been saying for the past week, this is not true. It's absolutely true. I mean, you're in the technology industry. Thoughts on H-1Bs?
It's the whole freaking premises of them being here in the first place. Okay, so we're looking for workers, and we're looking for workers that'll work for peanuts. It's no different than the people coming across the border. They're willing to come here and get a job, or even in some cases, they're even remote. They're not in this country, but they're given a job by American companies that could be filled by an American person here.
Mm-hmm.
But they get paid less because they'll work for peanuts.
Yeah.
So this is not a surprise.
Yeah, well, it's not a surprise for you because you're paying attention. It's not a surprise to me. But some people, again, who they trust the legacy media, and they're told, no, that's not the case at all. We're just filling roles that Americans don't want, or that there's no qualified Americans. Of course, total BS. But
it's just another part of the scheme to drive down the equality of wages. They want to drive down Americans' wages down to a level where they're paying the H-1B visa workers so that everybody has their equality of outcomes.
right.
And everybody gets paid the same. It's another communist freaking construct that they've created to make this happen. And I'm not blaming Elon Musk for this. I'm not blaming Vivek for this. They didn't create this system. The freaking Democrats did.
Yeah. Well said. I can't add anything to that. Next one's to you, Jeff, and it's on the comparison of different energy sources. So I'm not going to read all this stuff off of here, but I'll skip ahead. Okay. So the standard nuclear reactor has 1,000 megawatt rating, and each of those plants, I want to say it's on like 1 acre or something. This guy goes through all the math and adds it up. There may actually be a graphic in this. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, here we go. The picture says 1,000 words, right? So nuclear takes 640 acres to produce 1,000 megawatts. Solar PV, photovoltaic cells, 24,000 acres, and onshore wind, 89,600 acres. And all of the other stuff that affects the ecology would be that what do you do with all the old batteries from these things? What do you do with wind turbines that you had to consume more energy to make them than they'll ever produce? And all these have moving parts, they have limited lifespans. It's really not a competition. There's nothing out there that even comes close to what nuclear can produce at a much lesser cost to the environment.
So we're talking about carbon footprints with regard to just getting the thing up in the first place. And the carbon footprint, it's amazing how much energy it takes. All the things that you mentioned in a one wind turbine, the fact that they have to put the concrete down with the rebar, building the machine, the actual oil that it takes to run it, to lube it and run it. There was a story a few years ago, a hurricane went through Florida, and there's a place north of Tampa that was supposedly all electric, and they were tied into the grid. What they didn't tell you is they're still tied into the grid. But after the storm, after the hurricane went through and everybody's power was gone, this community, and it was something ranch, I can't remember the name of it. I looked up, did a whole write up on it, and what they didn't tell you is that those solar panels that they had up that covered so much acreage, like 43 football fields of acreage, only produced enough power because they don't have the proper batteries for it to charge about, I think the example they used was 8,000 cell phones up for 14 minutes apiece. And the thing is that that was just homes. They're building a town totally founded on that premise of electric, alternative electricity. I wish I knew the name of that. I can't think of it right now. But the infrastructure at that point did not include schools, stores, anything major think about the electricity the school uses, or a grocery store, or none of that stuff was part of the infrastructure at that point, even though they were talking about building it on at some point. So you have to think that if I could run part of my city during the day when the wind was blowing and or the sun was shining, I'm great. But the minute the clouds come out, the minute the wind stops blowing, any of those things, you are toast. And you can't even, you better have your phone charged before the lights go out, because you're going to be screwed if you don't. So all these things that they point to. One, I worked at a power plant for about 6 years. I worked at a power plant here in East Texas, and there were 3 750 megawatt units that they're coal burning, and it was lignite. It was not bituminous or any majorly cool, good burning coal, but those units would produce in the summer around 800 megawatts each, and but the thing is, in a system like that, you have 100 units of that type tied together. The minute one of them goes down in a big load situation, the remainder, what that unit is not producing now, has to be jacked up in the other units to make up for it, to maintain the power level on the grid. So, I mean, these are all cool things, but if anybody's going to tell me that solar and wind are not, they're going to screw up more than they're going to help. They need to get on with those nuclear reactors, and they need to get them up fast and deregulate. And if the oil industry had any sense about them at all, they would have invested in these things ahead of time and padded their corner with regard to the regs that are coming against them and did come against them. So I know I got off a little bit of a tangent on that, but this is like one of my favorite subjects in the world.
Well, so specific to Florida, I am not a big fan of Rick Scott for a whole bunch of reasons, which I won't delve into. Definitely better than Christie was, prior to that, but still not great. He was lobbied by FPL and Duke, Florida Power and Light, and Duke Energy during Hurricane Matthew to make it illegal to power your home by solar panels unless you had a battery backup to simulate the grid. Now, what's bullshit about that is we have gone from having the weakest building codes in the country to the strongest building codes in the entire world. So we have two building codes. We have the Florida Building Code, and we have what are called Miami-Dade NOAs. And most commercial stuff is built to Miami-Dade MOAs. So with that being said, it was already in the building code, both of them here in Florida, that if you had solar panels and the grid went down, there had to be an automatic transfer switch that took you off the grid and isolated your solar panels so you weren't going to electrocute a line worker. Okay. That was already code. And it's the same thing as having a generator. The grid goes down, the sensor picks it up, flips the transfer switch. You're running off your generator. It senses the grid comes back up again. It flips it back and turns the generator off. Well, what that did is it effectively doubled the cost of a solar PV system. So at that point in time, when Matthew hit us, the average solar PV system for a home sold for $30,000 installed. And in order to have enough battery backup to run a place through each night indefinitely was another $30,000 essentially. And this is before Tesla Powerwalls came out, and even a Tesla Powerwall is 13,000 watt hours is still 20,000 installed. They have a price on them at 10,000, but it's 20,000 installed. Point being is FPL and Duke did that to screw the solar industry. You would think, being the sunshine state, that we would have tremendous adoption for solar, and we don't. There are many states that have much higher per capita rates on solar systems than we do here. So I went off on the tangent there a little bit as well. Next one.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah, sure.
The reason why, which is really kind of funny, because Duke Energy has been going around buying up properties all over the territories that they cover. They've been buying up land out there, and they've been putting out these solar farms out there that you don't see because they're lined up behind a grove of trees. But you'll see acres and acres of these solar farms out there. And here's the problem. Any solar panel that you're going to find on the market today is only 22% efficient. In other words, it costs more to make the damn panel than what they're ever going to put out in their lifetime.
Yeah, it's the numbers are atrocious. I totally agree.
If I could add just one quick thing to that, Bjorn Lomborg has a book, and it deals with things. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I just read it like last year, and he talks about that very thing. They're not going to get the money back. You guys know there's a transmission line going from New Mexico, I think, all the way to California. They're spending billions on the transmission lines. Anytime you put in those items, fans, solar, whatever, you still have to tie back into the grid. And the cost is exponential. So there's hidden costs there. They're not telling us about. And if you don't dig deep into it, you're not going to find out about it. And so anyway, I'll stop there. But like I said, that's a thing with me. I'm not a big fan.
I'm with you, Jeff. I could go all day long on alternative energy sources.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, fair enough. We've got 8 minutes, so we won't get through all of the stuff in chapter 2. But if you go download the sit rep, they're all in there. Next one up is for US 2, and this is Scott Jennings on Jimmy Carter's legacy. I don't know if we'll play the whole 2 minutes or not, but I think some people need to be aware that while Jimmy Carter appeared to do lots of altruistic stuff after he got out of office, building homes, Habitat for Humanity and whatnot, there was a shady side to him as well. And Scott Jennings captures it well.
He was a terrible president. That's why he lost in a landslide after his one term. And if it's possible, I think he was even a worse ex-president because of his meddling in U.S. foreign policy, because of his saddling up to dictators around the world, because of his vehement views, anti-Israel views, and more than dabbling in anti-Semitism over the years. He often vexed Democrats. Obama didn't even have him speak at his 2008 convention. He put Bill Clinton in a terrible foreign policy box on a North Korea nuclear issue. I think he was a guy who had a huge ego and believed that he was uniquely positioned to do all these things, even after the American people had roundly and soundly rejected his leadership. So I respect people who run for president and get elected president, but in his particular case, I think he time and again proved why he was never suited for the office in the first place.
I don't often say this, but Scott, I agree with you to a certain extent. President Carter was meddlesome with his successors. He forgot sometimes that he still wasn't president. For all the meddlesome behavior as a post-president, which is well documented, I don't think that it outweighs the contribution that he made as a global citizen after he left.
Can I just offer one retort, which is this. In the run-up to the Persian Gulf War, he wrote letters
Yeah, I know about this.
to all of our allies and to Arab states, asking them to abandon their cooperation and coalition with the United States of America. If it's not treasonous, it's borderline treasonous. And so I hear what you're saying about the humanitarianism, but when you're an ex-president and you have served in that office, I think you have a duty to the United States and only to the United States. And when he did that and other instances, to me, it showed that he cared more about his own legacy than he did about the country. And I think that is wrong.
All right, I'll stop that one there. S2, your thoughts on Jimmy Carter's legacy?
Having grown up in that era and watched what he did with the Iran hostages, that's something that nobody else ever talks about either, is they came out of there with not one single hostage that was rescued until the second attempt at negotiations occurred. And as far as him being a global citizen, yeah, Jimmy Carter, a little peanut farmer from Georgia. He was never a little peanut farmer from Georgia. And other things that he's been meddling in as well has been the elections. They wanted to set up the Carter Center to run our United States elections, which has been riddled with all sorts of fraud going on all over the place. And they just wanted to be the middleman in there to make sure that fraud was never revealed. So as far as his legacy goes, he may have done some good things in his life, but the things that he did in and outside of the presidency were far worse than any of the things that he ever did to help anybody. And I'm sure that all of the things he ever did were self-serving.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So we'll move on to the next one here. We've got, let me see, 4 minutes left on chapter 2. So this probably should have been in chapter 3, but I don't care. I'm going to play it in chapter 2. And this is a pretty crazy video for somebody who didn't get their food.
You fucking understand me. Okay, you gave me, I ordered 3 fucking combos. You owe me 3 fries, 3 curly fries. You left my sister's shit out. Fix my shit or I will blow this whole motherfucker up.
Wait for me to get out first.
Do you fucking understand me?
Wait for me to get out.
Okay, fix him now. What you taking me for? I don't give a fuck about you or your fucking damn work.
Ooh, beat that. Yeah.
We gotta get out. We gotta get out. We gotta get out.
And it just continues to devolve from there.
You know what? What I did not see in that room, I did not see any Christmas trees.
Oh my God. I've lost track now. Whose story is this now? Is it Jeff or us who owns this one?
I don't even know, man. If you want to hear what I got to say,
let her up.
She doesn't need a double anything. As a matter of fact, she probably needs a salad and a Diet Coke, bless her heart. But Lord of mercy, what do you think's going to happen to you if you go into a place talking crazy like that? And she got what she deserved. I don't know how I would handle it. And I guarantee you those employees are going to get fired for that. But you know what? I would take that as a badge of honor. You fire me for something like that, I would say, you know what? Thank you very much. Just give me my check right now and I'll leave and you have a nice day.
S2, do you want to add anything to that before we pivot to the next chapter?
I'm trying to figure out why nobody called the police.
It's valid. Maybe they showed up afterwards. I don't know, but
I mean, if you stand there with your phone in your hand, that seems to be the weapon of choice these days.
Right.
If you stand there with your phone in your hand and say, "I'm on the phone with the police right now," chances are she would probably leave before they got there, and this could have been de-escalated.
Quite possibly. Yep. I can't disagree with that at all. You're right. Nobody took any really proactive action there, that's for sure. But anyway, that's we got through about a half of what we had queued up for chapter 2, but that's all right. And we've got another, say, 30 minutes or so to get through chapter 3 and the conflicted question. And then we'll put a wrap on tonight. Before we do that, I just want to briefly mention, quick shout out to some companies we work with. Black Forest NMN. Have you heard of this, Jeff?
No, sir. I believe I have not. I don't believe I have. Pardon me.
S2 and I both been taking one form of NMN or another for 7-8 months now. And the FDA is trying to ban this from supplement companies and give it to big pharma. They want to make it prescription based. So that says a lot as far as the efficacy is concerned. And they claim it's an anti-aging product. And I can't comment on that. I'm not an expert in that field. What I can tell you is that in my case, I will take this, say, for a month straight, and then on purpose stop taking it for a couple of days, and my energy level falls off a cliff. And S2 noticed an immediate difference as far as mental acuity is concerned. He works long hours just like the rest of us. And, you know, the more hours you work, not only do you need more energy, but your brain just doesn't function as well. Everybody knows that. Interesting side effect. And the other one that we've been pushing because I believe in it. I don't know if you've heard of these guys. They're in Texas as well, Jeff. Native Path is the parent company, but they're branched chain amino acids. Native Hydrates, the brand. And there's links for all this stuff below, by the way. You can get up to 44% off with the survival dispatch stuff on this. And we don't get paid an affiliate income from these guys, but nativehydrate.com/dispatch. Anyway, you know, Jeff, as well as S2, most branched chain amino acids taste like ass, and you just do your best to choke it down because you're trying to keep your energy level up and your recovery period tight and stuff. These actually pass the taste test. They taste really, really good. A lot of survival dispatch followers have bought these. And I'll tell you what, this is the best of all the branched chain amino acids that I've laid hands on. I used to get up 3-4 times a night, and there's an ingredient, and somehow the way they put this together is based on Army research. It's way above my pay grade. If I get up once a night, since I started using this now, it's many months now, it's usually 0 or 1 time a night. There's some bladder health stuff related to the product as well.
I just placed another order with them yesterday.
Yeah, it's good guys. All right. So we are going to jump into chapter 3, which is zany headlines and funny memes and everything else in between. And the first one here, this girl has something to say over this. Is it bird flu that they're calling it?
I told you this back in 2020 and 2021, and I'm going to tell you this again today. I want you to open your ears and close your mouth and listen to me very well when I say this. Don't blow it out your butt cheeks. I ain't freaking just like freaking clockwork. Here we are yet again. They're now coming out and saying you need to stay inside for 48 hours. Oh no, there's the bird flu. I don't care. I'm not doing this crap again. I didn't obey the rules the first freaking time, didn't wear a mask, I didn't stay inside, and I didn't get the pokey poke. And I will be damned on this crap. Yeah, and for you little secret squirrels, the little Paw Patrol that watches me from their little office, you know, the 3-letter entity, yeah, I don't give a crap. I ain't doing it again. I didn't do it the last time, like I said, and I ain't doing it this time. So you guys hear me when I say this. I'm looking right at my freaking camera. I ain't freaking doing it there, Jerry.
It goes on, but it gets into territory, as S2 says, Charlie 19, that again, we're flirting with disaster here on Channel Strike. So we'll move on to the next one here. And the question up top, is he correct?
We as white people used to look out for each other, but then we were told that was racist. So we started looking out for other people too. And now the country's full of black people that look out for each other, Indians that look out for each other, Chinese people that look out for each other, Jews that look out for each other. And we're still looking out for everybody else. We're out there trying to prove how much we're looking out for everybody else. other than our own people. And as a consequence, we're the last in line when a hurricane destroys a white city. We're the last in line when a white person calls the police. We're the last in line to get benefits from the government when COVID hits. We're the last in line when we apply to college or a job at a prestigious corporation. And we're the only ones being ridiculed and attacked. We're the ones who can be racist against, and you can mock our religion, because we were too busy looking out for everybody else while they were all looking out for themselves. Democrats call me a racist. Conservatives, Republicans say I'm a real white supremacist. I'm a real white nationalist. I'm a real bad guy. When they tell me that I should just be an individualist and America's for everybody, my message is them first. Them first.
All right, we'll leave it at that because I do get fairly frequent emails from people accusing us of being racist, but whatever. That's all they got these days. Moving on to one of my favorite sheriffs across the entire country, right here in Polk County,
Yes,
on the southwest side of Orlando. We have some mutual friends. I have not met Grady Judd, but we have some mutual friends. I love this guy. This reporter, and it's kind of hard to hear the reporter, is essentially trying to say that a person who shot a carjacker shouldn't have done that because property is not more important than life. And you'll see what Grady Judd's response is to that.
Sheriff, you're not allowed to use deadly force for a property crime. Why do you say he would have been justified in doing it?
First off, he tried a carjacking with a lady. And then he was doing a burglary of a vehicle. And he was in the string of a group of felonies at the time. When you start trying to carjack somebody's car at a gas station, you're subject to get shot and shot a lot.
Did he have a weapon?
She didn't have to have a weapon, brother. You can carjack with just pure violence and force.
You don't think that's a dangerous message you're putting out?
That is the absolute correct message I'm putting out to Polk County citizens. You try to break into somebody's car and steal it while they're there with it, that's called armed carjacking.
Some attorneys would disagree with you, but you're the sheriff, so.
If you come to this county and if you use extreme violence to try to carjack somebody from their car, if you get shot, that's on you.
God bless Grady Judd. He is.
It's actually called strong armed robbery, and it actually holds a much stiffer penalty than it would have if a guy had had a weapon.
Yeah. Anyway, Grady Judd, gotta love him. All right, moving on to the next one here. Legacy Media. We had no idea that Biden was cognitively impaired the last 4 years. Joe Biden the past 4 years.
Beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer. My memory is fine. The president of Mexico, CC, did not open up the gate. with and Mitterrand from Germany, from France, looked at me and said, I'm going to be a president of everybody whether you live in a red state or a green state. Anyway, I don't want to.
I just got to put this out there. I was told not to say things like this, but I'm not going to stop. You have to be a complete and utter fucking moron to have ever voted for Joe Biden, whether it's 2020 or earlier. He's been a pathological liar his entire life. He's done nothing but work in government his entire life. He had to drop out of the 1988 primary because he lied about graduating at the top of his class with 4 degrees, blah, blah, blah. He graduated at the bottom of his freaking class and he got 1 degree, not 4 degrees. And it drives me nuts that people who you would think were intelligent otherwise support this fucking clown.
And he was an engineer too.
Roe v. Word. The best way to get something done.
Did you catch that? Roe v. Word.
If it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to. Anyway, of Putin's kleptocracy, yeah. $159,000 billion let. America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him. What am I doing here?
Spit it out, Joe.
Two. Gang. I'm going to pronounce right. Shanga.
He had the nuclear keys, guy. He had it.
He still does.
Oh, jeez.
Unfrickin' believable, huh? All right, moving on to the next one. Let's inject a little bit of levity here. And this video is titled "Old Man Farting on People." And yes, I'm 55, Jeff's 65, and Jeff's around my, or S2's around my age. We still laugh at stuff like this.
And I'm gonna tell you, them old man farts are deadly.
They can fire at will too. They can fire at will. S2 fire at will.
I'm gonna play the full 2 minutes and 46 seconds of this video because I gotta be honest, S2. This is right up there with trying to steal Christmas trees by stuffing them up your vagina.
There's no way. Like,
How can you just sit there? Oh Lord. Nowhere to run. There's nowhere to run. Oh Lord.
Run away, run away.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Oh my God.
Oh man.
So, yeah, 55 going on 15.
That was much needed right there. I think.
Oh my God. All right. The next piece of insanity, and this is the person delivering your food.
Yeah, at work, I drop off an order, and my diaper's getting kind of full right now, so I might need to change really soon. But it is very discreet. Check out my last video for the discreet outfits video. But my diaper is getting a little full right now. Yeah, at work, I drop off an order.
I don't know what to say about that, but anyway.
Ew.
Yeah. Here's an example of badassery right here. In 2007, U.S. Navy SEAL Mike Day was shot 27 times by Al-Qaeda militants in his legs, arms, abdomen, buttocks, scrotum, and then knocked out by a grenade. Not only did he survive, he managed to shoot dead all four of the militants and walked away unaided after he regained consciousness. That's a true hero right there. All right, moving on to the next one here. I've noticed that everyone who owns a boat seems to be a Trump supporter. And the response is that's because there's currently no government program that gives you boats away. You have to work for a boat. Oh, man. And Sean Spicer ran a poll, 92,674 votes, 67.4% against H-1B visas. You know, another crime perpetuated on America. All right. Are we going to start the next Congress pretending the left didn't steal multiple U.S. House and Senate seats? I was thrown in solitary confinement for peacefully protesting a stolen election on J6. I want to see those who stole elections arrested and thrown in solitary confinement. And
Fair ask.
yeah, I second that one. We mentioned this last night, and New Yorkers are very happy about this. The Guardian Angels are patrolling the New York subways again, and it's definitely a good thing for all kinds of reasons. And this one is kind of crazy. You're not sick, you're just under the weather. So I've been reading as much as I can on this this mystery fog across the country and people claiming that they're getting sick from it. I can't say that it all squares up just yet, and I'm inclined to believe that it's much ado over nothing, but I could be wrong. And I guess, pardon me, we'll see what happens over the next few days. All right. White privilege is the ability to suffer life's universal indignities without blaming another ethnic group. Ain't that the truth? All right. The best part of waking up is Donald Trump is president. I keep hearing the music for Folgers in Your Cup whenever I look at this one. All right. I think I may have put this one up last night, but maybe not. But Kamala Harris paid $2 million to rent Oprah and lost. Trump put a sticker on a garbage truck and won.
A clean garbage truck, very clean garbage truck, which is kind of cool.
Exactly. So I want to get both your thoughts on this. So today, Mayor Muriel Bowser met with President Donald Trump. Following the meeting, the mayor shared the following statement. Today, President Trump and I had a great meeting to discuss our shared priorities for the president's second term. President Trump and I both want Washington, D.C. to be the best, most beautiful city in the world, and we want the capital to reflect the strength of our nation. I won't read the final paragraph. It's more platitudes like that. I mean, she hates Trump. So what do you make of that statement?
Kissing the ring, or ass as it may be.
Okay.
She needs to be fired.
I mean, yeah, it's been bad, right? I mean, the stuff that she's done that's anti-American and anti-Trump is just over the top. Jeff, you want to add anything to that?
She's been mayor since 2015. And so you know everything that's gone on with that, with the way they painted the streets, with part to do with J6. Listen, she's neck deep, like my friend used to say. She's up to her ass in alligators. If she does not kiss his ass, then that's going to be she doesn't want to be him gunning for her. I promise you, she does not. And yeah, that's an appropriate action if you want to keep your spot at the table.
Right. All right. Sadly, due to the lack of any trust, actually, let me read the first part down here. So Jason D. Meister, China didn't hack us. The deep state is using it as a cover up to bleach bit everything into oblivion before January 20th. And Mike Flynn, General Mike Flynn's response, sadly, due to the lack of any trust whatsoever in any part of our federal government, no one, and I mean no one, trusts the feds. And I mean, there's not much to comment on there because he hit the nail right on the head. So let's move over to this one. Congressman Shreer Thanadar, racism in America is still alive and well, and we must stand up to it together. Just read the replies to any recent post that includes H-1B to see the deplorable rhetoric targeting Indian Americans. That's why I introduced a bipartisan resolution condemning all Hindu phobia. And Dr. Reason says, what does it say about a people who import foreigners and then tolerate those foreigners, lecturing them on their racism? How would Indians feel about foreigners moving there and lecturing them on street shitting? So I mentioned the other day ago that we had a very large contract with Nortel Networks to manage one of their labs, about 70,000 servers there. I had a team of systems engineers. And I was on site every Thursday, and I had an office that I shared with some of my guys. And when I looked out of my office, I could see the men's restroom, and I could watch the janitorial staff go in there and leave. And if I went in right after them, of course, it was perfectly clean. If I didn't go in there for another half hour or so, I would have to leave because there was shit on the walls, the floor, the commodes, it fucking everywhere. and it was so disgusting. And Nortel badged employees were so pissed off about this happening because we'd outsourced a bunch of work to WePro, which is a Indian company that specializes in writing code. And so somebody took it upon themselves to send me a nasty email saying I was racist for saying this stuff. And what they ended up doing is they put in a separate restroom for them, multiple, because it's a big facility that has a hole in the ground that they just drop their trousers back up to it, shit in the hole, and off they go. And I'm racist for bringing this up, or I'm racist for telling this account. I'm not the only person. You can ask a gazillion people who've worked with them. It is a wildly different culture than ours. They eat with one hand, they wipe their ass with the other one, and they shit all over the place. I don't care. You can call me a racist all you want. That's the reality of the situation. So anyway, moving on to the next one. You idiot. You can't threaten me with that. That's illegal. That's about it from the left, right? This one's good. It's, well, funny, not funny, right? Everything is fine.
She broke the glass.
Yeah, she sure did.
This one's pretty accurate. Update. Senator Mitch McConnell congratulates Speaker Pelosi on a successful hip replacement. 2 words, term limits. We need them now. All right, check this out. This semi driver, and he's got dual trailers on this thing. Check this out. This is badass, man.
That is your final test at CDL school.
That's friggin' amazing. I mean, absolutely.
If I could throw something in there, I did some work in the oil field as a younger man, and I have seen the backhoe workers get in competitions with one another. I saw with my own 2 eyes a backhoe operator get on the back bucket. Of course, the back bucket's got the tines in the front of it. I saw him pick up a quarter in that bucket off the concrete.
Yep.
And he did it by flipping it over into the bucket. It was amazing. Yeah, you guys are good.
Yeah, I've seen that myself, and a friend of mine, I didn't get to see it, but he was telling me when he saw a guy do that, not only did the guy pick up the quarter off the ground with the bucket on a backhoe, he dropped it in somebody's shirt pocket.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, just super skilled. And I don't know if you all have caught this guy. There's this Chinese guy in China who, specializes in doing Trump impersonations. And here he is in his latest video. And it's not the first guy that you see here.
China is becoming more accommodating to English-speaking tourists. Many shops and vendors.
You're looking for someone who speaks English? Come on. What you looking for, fella?
We got Donald Trump selling hot dogs.
Are you looking for something that's really tasty, the local signature dish that you will never forget for the rest of your life? You've come to China and you've come to Chongqing. You know what? You should definitely try this. I got the right thing for you. Ta-da! This is the Chinese hot dog. You know what? Let me shake your hands, little fella. Let me shake your hands. And oh, come on, man. You look so thin. You're so frail. A little bit. You know what? You should be bulking. You should be bulking like me. You know what I eat? I eat this every single day. This has got the perfect carbs, protein, and the healthiest fat in it. So you should definitely have it. You know what? The first one is on me. It's your lucky day, little fella. It's a gift from China, Chongqing.
Thank you. Congratulations.
It was good and it's funny. I mean, it's not as good as the farting video, but it's funny.
His social credit score just went down a few notches.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. All right, so that's the end of chapter 3. We're in the home stretch here. I want to show you all a quick video. So we've got a new sponsor who's been a friend of mine for many years, Flex Industries, flexindustries.com. And I'll be at SHOT Show. And if you happen to be at SHOT Show, make sure you come and see me. I'll have sample triggers. Some of the AR triggers are a little on the pricey side. There are middle of the road, but they've got a new AK trigger coming out that's pretty badass. And you can check it out here.
AK Flex. AK Flex, the crazy part about this thing, it can fit in all platforms. This right here is in a 9mm. We running in the 7.62, 5.45, short, even in the Draco, the long 16-inch. AK Flex, baby.
So if you go to flexindustries.com, use the discount code SD17, you get 17% off any of their triggers. They've got a pretty badass one that's totally legal for Glocks, by the way, called the G Flex. Pretty impressive performance for what it costs, for sure. Other than that, like I said, I'll be at SHOT Show, and if you happen to be there, please see if you can't find me, and would love to meet you. And like I said, I'll have samples for the first people, at least, that I run into out there at SHOT Show. So if you haven't gone to patreon.com/survival dispatch, you can go there, sign up for a free membership. You get 50% of our briefs for free. Paying members get all of our briefs. It's a daily situation report. It takes a lot of time and effort to build them. It's like a curated daily newspaper. And you get some other cool stuff, like S2 mentioned the Signal chat. We put the Signal chat in place because we said to people, listen, if the shit hits the fan and the data networks stay up, you'll be able to go to this Signal chat and get information from S2 and Mike Sterling and the rest of us. So it was more of a contingency play. What we didn't realize is that it was going to turn into a super active community of sharing information, like S2 mentioned earlier. And it's absolutely taken off. You get a free invite to that if you sign up as a paying member of Survival Dispatch Insiders on Patreon. So with that being said, we're at the homework stage. And so we assign homework at the end of each of our videos relative to the first topic that we covered, which tonight, of course, was fake news. So I've got 5 points here, and then I'll give Jeff and S2 a chance to give you their suggestions. Number one, in light of all the fake news, be skeptical of everything, especially if the story is from the Mockingbird media, where they're all saying the exact same thing. Number two, trust your gut instincts. We're the only living beings on this planet who will ignore our gut instincts. A dog or a cat, sees a dog, it runs away. It's instinctual, and it doesn't question that the dog poses a threat to it. But every single person who has survived a violent encounter, every last one of them, has gone on to say something wasn't right. But instead of choosing safety, they went ahead and carried on, and bad things happen. So it's just, I'm trying to make the point, as far as your gut instincts are concerned, they're real and you should trust them. Number three, research stories on your own if you have time. If you don't have time, then get truthful news from people like us, Survival Dispatch News, and other podcasters, citizen journalists, as everybody's calling them now, that aren't bought and paid for by big corporate entities, big pharma, Big Brother, or anybody else. We don't have a dog in the hunt. We don't get paid by big pharma to bring any of the information to you that we do, but we do take, I would guesstimate very easily, there's 19 people who work on Survival Dispatch in one capacity or another. On a daily basis, we all read, combine together millions of words of news and research, and then we condense it down into our daily situation report / brief for our episodes. So if you don't have time to do all that yourself, you can get our stuff, which has been highly researched. I mean, S2 does this stuff 24/7, 365, and so do I. And the rest of our team, even if it's not 24/7, is darn close to it. All right. And the last one, push back against fake news with your circle of friends and family. So if somebody in your circle says Joe Biden is as, sharp as a tack, push back on that and let them know that that's just not the case, and that they're drinking Kool-Aid, and they got to get off the Kool-Aid, or just like everybody else in Jim Jones's world is going to end up dying from drinking the Kool-Aid. That's it for my suggestions. S2, any thoughts on homework for your audience in light of fake news? I think you're on mute, S2.
So on your point of research stories on your own, that's a lot easier said than done. So my advice to people on that is swallow your ego. And if you don't know where to find the information, ask somebody within your circle of friends that does. Say, where would you look to find this? For instance, on all of the government spending stuff, on all of the child trafficking that our government is pushing, You can go out to some of the database sites where they have to report what they're doing, and you'll find all of the contracts and the dollar amounts that are out there and who it leads back to. That's just one example. So
yeah, and I would just add to that, the biggest hurdle to researching stories on your own is time. People who have full-time jobs, they have a family, they have kids, they've got a household to look after. It's near impossible to find the time, and it's absolutely impossible to find the amount of time that we invest in going from everything from CNN to Alex Jones and everything in between when we're doing our research. But the only thing comes to mind on that S2 is maybe, somebody who's retired and has time to do all this stuff. But for most people, you're right. It's an unrealistic tall order just based on the time requirements alone. Jeff, your thoughts on dealing with fake news?
Okay, so when I was going over the brief today after you sent it to me, it kind of got me to thinking. So first of all, I think that in the United States, we're dealing with fake news, could be kind of considered a fifth column because we know who they work for, and they're not the majority of the people, but they're a very small percentage. And remember, the Federalist number 10 says that we're not just dealing with majority tyranny, we're dealing with minority tyranny as well. And there are notes in there about that. But I think the fifth column is similar to an iceberg. So what we see is only about 10%. The other 90% is below the waterline. And for the most part, it's invisible. What we have to do is we have to worry about this thing is going to flip at some point in time. But I think why that works for us is because when it flips, it exposes the other 90% briefly, and we see what the truth is. We see what was lurking beneath the surface. And in the context of how we react to this, we have to take it on our own recognizance. Pardon me. I'm working on that word. And we have to research. We have to learn. We have to prepare. We have to inform others. Unabashedly embrace your position, and you have to let other people know what's going on. The Bible says if you go to a person and you talk to them and they don't listen to you, then you dust your shoes off and you walk on. And that's paraphrasing, but I mean, it does say that. And I think, sometimes people come to their own realization a little later, but they generally come to it. And some people, you like Cool Hand Luke, some men you just can't reach. And so, just do your part, stay moving forward, take the media with a grain of salt. I don't care what branch it is, and do your research and learn and try to become a more intelligent, more productive, more thoughtful human being about what's taking place, and then we all help each other.
The Japanese call that Kaizen, Kaizen. It means continuous improvement. And it's one of the guiding principles behind every Japanese business, especially multinational ones. Before S2 does the conflicted question, I want to mention one more thing. The daily sit rep situation report, which is also the brief for our videos, has a new section in it for partner deals. So it has products that we endorse, and it has discount links and or discount codes where you can get pretty big breaks on all the common stuff that you need for prepping and survival. So with that being said, bringing home S2 with the conflicted question of the night.
Okay, so for those of you that may be not regularly with us or with us for the first time, this is how this works. We are going to read off a conflicted question, and we want to hear from you out in the audience in the comment section about your response to this question. But before I read this off, please smash that thumbs up button and the like button, because we're not seeing a lot of that out there right now. So without further ado, in 2013, over 8,000 French households paid taxes topping 100% of their incomes, according to French finance ministry data. This hefty tax led to a mass exodus of the rich from France, including actor Gerard Depardieu. He became a Russian citizen and had dinner with Vladimir Putin. If your country wanted to tax 100% of your income, what options would you have?
I'm going to answer first because my answer is about as simple as it gets, and it's a one-word answer: revolution. End of story. There would, if they ever got to the point where they were taxing people 100% here in America, and we got our independence over a small tax on tea, 100% tax is justification for Revolution 2.0 in my book. And I'm not encouraging anybody to engage in violence, but if an American government ever tried to do that, then they deserve to be thrown out of office violently. That's my answer. Jeff, you want to field it?
I believe the marginal tax rate under Eisenhower was 91% back in the 50s. Is that correct? Am I right on that? Because John Kennedy came in and lowered it to 70%. Now, it's not the same country. It's not the same industrial base. It's not the same anything as it was then. So there's different ways to look at that, I'm sure. But I'm kind of with you. Like if the tax rate were to get that high, I've got to find something else to do, and I'm going to find the bandwidth, and then we have to make our voices heard. And I would be willing to bet that we would not be alone. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So Eisenhower inherited a top marginal income rate, so the highest tax rate, of 92% from his predecessor, Harry Truman, when he entered the White House in 1953. He quickly lowered it to 91%, where it stayed until LBJ, one of the biggest crooks ever in office. He's the guy who ordered the hit on JFK. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I think you'll get confirmation of that under Trump's upcoming administration. They're going to release that information. Anyway, LBJ lowered it to 77% in 1964, then 70% in 1965, and blah, blah, blah from there on in. But pretty egregious rates for sure, Jeff. Yeah. S2, your answer, and we're done.
So they already tax our incomes 100%. It's what percentage they take out of our incomes is what we're actually taxed at. All that being said, I think I would probably go underground and find ways of making a living in that way in the black market.
Yep, fair enough. All right, we will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, like every other night of the week here at Survival Dispatch. We've got General Paul Valley joining us, not tomorrow, but the next day, I believe. But don't quote me on that, because one day just blends into another. We had a meme last night that you guys probably missed that said this is the most dangerous time of the year, because between Christmas and New Year's, nobody knows what day of the week it is or what time of day it is or anything like that. We lose all perception of that stuff. So it may even be tomorrow night that General Valley's on. I honestly don't recall, because it all blends in together. But that's it. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
Thank you, gentlemen. Happy New Year.
We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots.